This podcast is sponsored by Bigger Brains, online training that won't bore you to tears. Expand the minds of your workforce at getbiggerbrains.com.
Welcome to Permission to Speak, the video blog and podcast that loiters at the intersection of leaders who want their people to speak up, technology that facilitates connections, and results that serve our higher purpose. Now, here's your host, Kelly Vandever.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. This is Kelly Vandever, and my special guest today is Steve Cohn. For the last 18 years, Steve Cohn has helped thousands of companies, seminar participants, and audience members create better and more successful relationships with customers, employees, and each other. He has shared his passion for great customer experiences as a seminar leader, speaker, and consultant in 35 states, 12 countries, and Puerto Rico. He's worked with clients such as Mercedes-Benz, MasterCard, Kia, IBM, Federal Express, FedEx International, KeyBank, Mazda, Delta Airlines, and many, many more. Steve is the Director of Learning at Strativity, a global experience design and transformation firm, and he is the author of the book, It's Not Rocket Service. Welcome, Steve, to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, Steve, as you know, we like to start with a couple of quirky questions to get to know our interviewees a little as human beings. So my first question for you is, what actor would you want to play you in a movie?
Well, you know, it's very, very funny because a few years ago on Facebook, they had this thing going around, who's your doppelganger?
Yeah.
Who's your other person who's looks just like you, and I looked at it and I said, well, you know, I've always looked in the mirror and I think about movies. You know, I think Rick Moranis, who is the lead in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, that I always thought I looked like him, and then like 12 people got on and said, Rick Moranis, what are you kidding me? It's got to be Rick Moranis. And I'm like, okay, fine. That's who I would have play me. First of all, he's funny. He's a pretty good actor, and he looks a little bit like me, especially when I used to wear glasses. So he would be it.
Perfect. And yes, I see the resemblance.
And big cheeks.
Very cool. And you need to have somebody that had a good sense of humor to play you because you have such a lovely sense of humor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All righty. And what is your favorite possession? I think I know the answer to this one, but...
My favorite possession is my music collection. I have approximately 12 or 1,300 CDs and about the same in LPs. The most shattering moment of my life was when I realized that MP3s were taking over and that nobody was going to be able to buy CDs anymore. And so, but that's my favorite possession. I still go back to my LPs and play the LPs, and it has music from everywhere from the 1920s to the 2000s.
Yeah. And I've been to your home, so I've seen that massive collection.
Yes.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a shame you won't have something tangible with MP3s to be able to look at and admire.
Yes. I could go on and on about that, but I'm not going to.
Okay. All right. And now something a little deeper. So what is your story? What happened in your life that got you to a place where you cared about customer experience and the employee's impact on exceptional service?
You know, it's funny you should ask that question, especially with the customers and the employees. I mean, there's two things. One is I grew up in the retail business. My grandfather had a men's clothing store for many years. My father worked for him. My father, it was my mother's father, and my father worked for him, which was very interesting. But every Father's Day, every Christmas, every summer, well, once I became a teenager, I worked in the store. You know, the whole family worked in the store. It was a family business. And I got to work with customers all the time. And my grandfather, I literally learned at my grandfather's knee. I mean, I used to sit in a chair right next to him, and in the summertime, it's very quiet because men's clothing stores at the time, and probably today too, he said, you know, we could be open on June for Father's Day and December for Christmas and close the rest of the year because that's where we make our money. But he taught me some great things about customers. He said, you just got to treat customers like they're your neighbors. And he said, in this store, it's a neighborhood store, it's on a street, and they are our neighbors. And when they come in, I know their kids. I know that their kids are in high school. I know one's going off to college. I know that their husband was sick. You know, he says, I know these people, and that's how you have to start to treat people like you know them. And then he also said to me about retail, he said, retail is the easiest sale in the world. When somebody walks into your store, they're basically saying, I could buy today. And he said, never forget that. He says, you want difficult? Do cold calling. That's difficult.
Yes, as we know. Yeah. So, so those are a couple of lessons that you learned from your grandfather about the way to treat customers.
Yeah.
Did your grandfather have employees besides you and your father?
Actually, he had my father for most of the time. Somewhere around when I was 15, I think they finally hired a kid from the neighborhood to work there. And they had a couple of people who worked there. But that was it. You know, it was a small store. But I was going to say that it was not only the store, but when I went into my training and speaking career, I started working with a couple of companies that were doing contract training, so I was doing their programs. But the first program I did was a selling program in the mobile phone business. It was like right at the beginning of the digital revolution. And so I was teaching selling. And then he had a management course. And I started teaching the management course. At the same time, I had been a writer. I'm a writer by trade. Same time, I was teaching a writing course, which was my course. And I suddenly realized that, you know what? For sales, it's all a bit, if you want to be successful, it's all about this customer who's buying. It's all about the buyer. In customer experience, it's all about the customer. In management, it's all about the employee. And in writing, it's all about the reader. And then I started thinking about speaking, and I said, and in speaking, it's all about the audience. It's the same thing. It's always about the other person. And once I had that revelation, that realization that everything in life is about the other person and thinking outside yourself, that my whole philosophy fell into place. I was able to create my own programs and do those types of things and work as a consultant because I had I used to say I have a line, and that's the line, and everything bounces off the line, everything I teach.
As far as the way you treat others, that's
right.
that's the line. Okay.
That's right. That's the line.
Interesting. Very cool. Very cool. Well, I have a ton of questions, and I'm trying to think about how to segue to the first group of questions, but I have no smooth way of doing that today. So, and I think that probably what you're talking about, how we treat people, will probably come up again as we're talking through these questions. But one thing I found interesting was that at the company you work for now, Strativity, you did some research and looked at 29 different customer experience factors. And the one that led the group, the one that customers said was a top loyalty driver, was employees' passion and pride and passion. Employees' pride and passion.
Yes.
So could you talk a little bit about that? And
you know, it's very funny because I don't see that a lot in the companies we work with. I've always said that I could walk into a company, spend an hour walking around to the different cubicles and offices and that, and I could tell them what kind of relationship they have with their people and what kind of relationship they have with their customers. Because you can see it. Are the people passionate or are they not? Are the people really interested in what the customer thinks or not? Are the managers interested in what the employees think or not? Somebody once asked me from a call center, he said, how do I find good people? What interview questions would I want to ask? And I said, well, what interview questions do you usually ask from a call center person? And he said, well, I always ask, tell me about a difficult customer you had and how you handled it, which frankly is the first question they always ask. And I said, that's not it. That's not it. Here's what you should ask them. Tell me about an experience that you had when you were serving a customer and you made them ecstatically happy. And then I said, you don't even have to listen to what they're saying. Watch their eyes. If they are acting and their eyes say that this is the most incredible thing that ever happened to them, hire them. Because you can't teach that kind of passion. You can't teach that kind of passion. You can teach skills to anybody, but you can't teach that kind of passion. You can't find that. We work with a lot of car dealers, and the same type of question. How do I find good mechanics? How do I find good technicians? And I said, what's the first question you ask? And they say, tell me about the dealers that you've worked in and what you have done. I said, again, that's the wrong question. The good question is, why do you love cars? Because if I'm hiring a mechanic for my car dealership, I want to know he loves cars. And if he loves cars, he's going to take care of those cars with such joy and affection that he'll do a phenomenal job.
So what if you have a staff of folks and you think they're good people and good employees, and maybe they don't, but you don't necessarily see that pride and that passion coming through? I mean,
right.
I don't know that you would advocate firing everybody and starting over again, but what would you advise a manager to begin doing or looking at with regards to their people?
Well, I'm a big believer in coaching and ongoing coaching. And again, my coaching philosophy is find out their story first, and then you can tell them your story. That way they will talk about what's happening inside. They'll talk about what happened. So coaching is a major thing. But I think the first thing that you really need to do is you need to re-interview them. Re-interview them, maybe not all at once, but over a series of weeks or months. Get to know your people. Get to know what they're passionate about. Get to know what really floats their boat. See if what they're doing is something that stimulates them. They say, I read this a long time ago, and it's just so true, that very often the people that you fire, it's not because they're lousy employees, it's because they're in the wrong job. Mm-hmm. And if they're in the wrong job, then they're never going to be good at it. And so find out what their passion is. And frankly, if they're in the wrong job, help them to find that other job that they'd be much happier at.
Right.
But really, re-interview them. And then start asking them questions about their lives and what they're passionate about. And then maybe you can make the connection to what they actually do for you.
Okay. Excellent. So, well, I've heard you say before that you can't pay somebody to smile sincerely, which I think is a great line. But how does that relate to what we were just talking about with regards to finding out what your employees are passionate about and finding out how what makes them tick?
Well, I always follow up that statement. You can't pay somebody to smile sincerely with a story. I had a friend who owned a Wendy's franchise, and he said to me one day, knowing what I do for a living, he said, "Oh, you'd love this." I go, "What's that?" He says, "I told my people on the front counters that they better be smiling or they're not working for me anymore." I said, "Yeah, but do they mean it?" If they don't mean it, who cares if they're smiling? And the idea that you can, number one, get somebody to smile sincerely when they don't mean it, when they don't care, is just ridiculous. And number two, that money, pay to smile sincerely, that money will make them do that. Money will never make them do that. What will make them do that if they feel good and passionate about their job, their workplace, and their leaders. And most people look for smiles or those types of things, thinking that they can actually convince somebody that works for them to do that. And it doesn't happen. So
do you have any examples of folks that took that to heart, took that message to heart, and tried to turn around their organization or their piece of the organization based on thinking about the things that we've been talking about here?
Right. So I worked with a manager once who, he was a gruff manager. He he saw his job as managing the department, making sure their results and they hit their KPIs and they hit every mark that they were supposed to hit, and they sold whatever products it was. And he said, and I told him that walking through his department and talking to his employees, I said, there's no passion among your people. Your people are coming to work every day and they're doing their job, and you might even think they're doing their job really, really well, but they're not, because they're not there. They're really not there. And I said to him that you need to, again, find out what their passions are. Find out why they've taken this job. How does this job fit into their lives? Is it just for money? If it's just for money, you're going to lose them. Is it because they need a job? That's a good start, but still. Why do they like this job? Why do they do this work every day? I once did a question in one of my classes with salespeople. I said, why do you do this job every day? And they looked at me like, what answer does he want? And I said, okay, so here's an answer you might have. Because you make good money at this. I said, and that's a good answer. So when we go back around the room, tell me what your answer is. And, it made them think about, why do I do this every day? Why do I really do this? And when people said, well, you said I could say money, I'm going to say money. And I said, that's fine. That's great. That's good, because you have a purpose. However, I want you to know that if money is your driving factor, your customer knows that, because it comes through every pore in your body. And your customer knows if you're happy about your job, if you're passionate about your job, if you really believe in what you're selling or what you're doing, it comes through. My friend Patty Wood is a body language expert, and she says you really can tell when somebody is engaged in their job just by looking at them. And so I told this manager, I said, I'd like you to do a little exercise with your people. Take them off their phones, take them off their whatever they're doing, and ask them, why do you do what you do? Why do you come to this job every single day? There are other jobs out there that will pay you the same amount of money, but you come to this one. Why do you do what you do? And then after that, you will know why they're there. And if they can't answer the question, then you need to sit down with them and actually have a heart-to-heart talk, because they're never going to be engaged. And so he did it. He did it. And he saw the results. He absolutely saw the results. We do, at Strativity, we do employee engagement surveys. So we send the employees a series of 20 statements, not even questions, statements, and we ask them to agree with them on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being, I totally agree with this, 1 being, I don't agree with this at all. They answer each one of the 20, and then we come up with the percentage of the employees who answered 8, 9, or 10. Because if it's less than 8, 9, or 10, there's no passion there. And then we actually put the answers, the results, all together, and we send them to the client, the company that they're working for. But we also do this. We break them down into 4 different categories of employees. Actively engaged, not engaged, and actively disengaged. 4 categories. How do we know what who fits into which category? People who score an average of 9 or 10 on all of the 20 questions, 20 statements, they're actively engaged. People who score 6, 7, or 8 are engaged. People who score 3, 4, or 5 are not engaged. And then there's the bottom. And when we look at this, we say that your actively engaged people you don't need to worry about. They're wonderful. Your engaged people you kind of don't have to worry about. However, we don't know which of your engaged people are close to falling into the non-engaged and which of them are close to rising into the actively engaged. When you talk about non-engaged people, these are the ones I talked about before. That these are the people who go through the day, they do their job, they look like they're enjoying it, but they're not enjoying it, and they look at the bell, and the bell goes off, and they go home. And then they wake up the next morning, they come to work, and they do it exactly the same way again. They're not engaged. They're sleepwalking through their day.
Right, right.
And then you're actively disengaged. These are what we call the saboteurs. They will kill your company because they are not only not engaged, they actually act out their anger and their frustration.
Well, I would imagine that your clients want to know exactly who is in which category. And do you tell that? Do you share that with them?
Yeah, so we don't know because it's all anonymous. But it's very, very funny because sometimes we do these big ballroom sessions, and I have 300 people in the room, and we talk about this. And I say, I go through the descriptions just as I did with you. And then I say, so here's what I want to know from you. How many of you could tell me how many of your people fit into the actively disengaged category? And almost everybody raises their hand. I said, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a piece of paper, and I want you to write down the people who work for you who you believe are actively disengaged. And they all do it. And I look out at them after they do it, and I say, so how many of you actually put down a name? Almost everybody. I said, so here's the question I have for you. What are you doing to bring those actively disengaged people up to at least not engaged? And if you've done everything you feel you can do, why are they still working for you?
Right.
You're sitting there, I said, you know who these people are. I'll guarantee you that if we did the survey with your company and we found out there were 3 people in your department who were actively disengaged, you could tell me who those 3 people are.
So what did they say when you bring that all
They
up?
go like this. They know.
Yeah.
Well, it's too much trouble.
So what should they do?
What should they do? Well, again, coaching. Again, find out what the person likes to do. Find out if there's anything that's happening in the job, number one, that could be affecting the fact that they're actively disengaged. What's happening in their lives that affects they're actively disengaged. If 2 years ago they weren't actively disengaged and now they are, you could have a conversation with them and say, I'm concerned about you. I'm concerned that 2 years ago I would say you were one of my best people, and now not so much.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
And then have that conversation with them.
Yeah.
Think about who they are and what they like to do. For instance, I am the kind of person who, if you give me a job to do and then basically tell me to run with it, I will do the most phenomenal work you've ever seen. But if you micromanage me, I will shrivel up like a prune because I can't be managed that way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And some managers, many managers, try to treat everybody the same.
Right.
And everybody's not the same.
Right.
So maybe this person who has become actively disengaged just basically has become bored.
Mm.
Give them something to do.
Yeah, a challenge.
Give them a special project.
Yeah.
Give them a challenge.
Yeah.
Find a way to reach him or her.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. Let's see. One of the concepts that I know that you talk about is the cynical voices in your organization. What can you tell us about that? Why is that a recurring theme, or why is that something that's important to address from a leadership perspective?
Cynical voices are right here. Cynical voices are right here. They're right here in the back of your head. They're not quite in your mouth, not quite in your brain, but they're right here. And this is the cynical voice. So this is the manager. So this is our new change. This is how we're going to change. We're going through a bit of a change here, and here's what's going to be happening here. But I will tell you, it's going to be for the best. It's going to be great for us, and we're going to have a much better department and a much better company afterwards. And he expects everybody to go, yeah! But the cynical voice in the back of your head says, yeah! That's not going to happen. We tried that before. We did that already. Didn't work. Oh, yeah. I remember when we did something like that before. Drove everyone crazy. And they say to themselves, this will never happen. Even more, and we have a way to address this. Even more, they look at it and they know exactly why it won't work. And they know exactly what's happening that's holding them back. So at Strativity, one of the things that we do with many of our clients is we ask people through the entire day of training, whether it's managerial training or line training, we ask them, what gets in the way? What gets in the way? What stops you from being the best that you can be at your job? What stops you from being one of those actively engaged employees? What is it? And then throughout the day, every few hours, we remind them, remember, fill out your what's holding you back forms. And then at the end of the day, and if we do several groups and classes on that, we take all of those what gets in the way forms, and then we compile them, and we make a summary for the client. And we go back to them and say, this is what your people are telling us. We didn't ask them to tell us what's wrong. We asked them to tell us what gets in the way. Mm-hmm. And they know exactly what gets in the way. And if you don't address what gets in the way, that's where the cynical voice comes from.
So how can leaders be more proactive in that light? Maybe even ask that question themselves and help make employees feel comfortable to actually answer the question instead of, confessing it to an organization, a consultant that comes in and helps them.
And they might not, depending on the relationship they have with the manager, they may not be willing to do that. So maybe you get somebody in the organization who is considered trustworthy, maybe the HR director, maybe a coworker who has moved up in the company and is no longer in your department. Somebody who there's some trust in. If you're seeing that your department, if you have 20 people in your department and you believe that 6 of those people are actively disengaged and 8 of those people are probably just not engaged, maybe you bring in a consultant. Bring in a consultant for a day. Talk about employee engagement and have them ask that question. And then at the end of the day, let them come back to you. No names, no words, summary.
Right. Right.
And every single time we do it, we find things that they did not realize. They have no idea. We've done the employee engagement surveys where I've done a action planning session with the leadership team, and I've said to them, this is what your people told me, number 1 in the survey and number 2 in a focus group. They told me they want role play training. And I had one sales manager say to me, they didn't say that. I said, yes, they did. He said, every time I mention role play training, they don't want to do it. I said, how often do you mention role play training? He says, pretty often. I said, how many times in the last 6 months? He says, well, I haven't. The people just told me they want role play training. And you know what? They know they just told me they want role play training. Give them role play training.
Yeah. So what are some of the mistakes that leaders do make? So that guy just assumed, no, they wouldn't have said that because maybe he thinks he wouldn't have said it, So what are some of the biggest mistakes that leaders make in trying to listen and engage with the employees?
They're not listening. They think they're listening, but they're not listening. What gets in the way? Tell me what gets in the way. I tell you what gets in the way. And then the leader, in true anti-coaching mode, says, well, you know why that happens? And then he has an answer for it. You know what? It gets in the way. I don't care what your answer is.
Right.
It needs to be fixed.
Right.
And if you shut me down like that, I'm going to say, well, why am I even having this conversation?
Exactly.
So they don't listen. They don't coach. Or they don't know how to coach. They think they're coaching, but they're not coaching. They don't know how to coach.
We'll talk about that a little bit. So what do they think that they're doing that is coaching, but why isn't it, and why? What should they do?
Kelly, I'm watching your interviewing style, and let me tell you what I've seen. Right?
Okay.
This is coaching. In their mind, this is what real coaching is. So Kelly, I've been watching you interview, and it's been very enlightening. What do you think you do best?
Well,
What do you think you have challenges in?
yeah.
What do you think that is? Because, one of the things that I was noticing is this and this. And what you said about where you think your challenges are, I think that kind of goes together. Do you agree? Notice where the center is. It's on you.
Right.
Rather than me.
Nice.
When I've taught coaching, we give them scenarios to do. And I had one scenario is your employee comes to you and complains, is really angry, excuse me, about the fact that he didn't get the promotion that was open a month ago or 2 months ago. And you never even thought about him for the promotion. So how do you handle that? So we put them into little groups and told them to pick one of the scenarios we had, and a couple of them picked that one. Well, one of the groups that picked that one, the guy who plays the employee says that, and the guy who plays the manager, he says, well, I got to tell you, I didn't even think about you when I thought about who should get that job. It didn't even cross my mind. And the guy who plays the employee played it to the hilt. He goes, it didn't cross your mind? I can't believe it didn't cross your mind. I've been here for this or that. And he goes on and on and on. And then the manager, the new manager, the guy who's playing the manager says, well, think about it this way. Why would I have thought about you? And then I hear almost yelling coming from this little group. So I go running over and I hear this going on. And I said, stop it. And they looked at me and I turned to the guy playing the manager. I said, what's your goal? What's your goal in this coaching session? Is your goal to tick him off so much that he's going to quit or just do a lousy job? Or is your goal to try to find some way to counter his argument or to help him be a better employee so that maybe one day he will be considered for the job? But what's your goal? Is your goal to tell him what he's doing wrong? Fine, you just hit your goal.
Right. Nice.
But it didn't do anything for him. It just helped you reach your goal.
Right. Good. Great examples. Excellent examples. Thank you. All righty. So in the leaders that you're working with, what have been a couple of the, maybe you just shared one or two of the biggest aha moments that leaders have when thinking about engaging their employees so that they can engage with the customer?
I think the biggest aha is when you basically convince the leader that they don't need you. They really don't need you. That if you went away for 3 weeks and everything ran wonderfully, you're doing a great job.
I'm not sure if I'm following you.
Okay, so I'm a manager.
Okay.
I work with my team. I go away for 2 weeks. It's my wedding anniversary. We're going to Hawaii. You don't go to Hawaii for 1 week. You go for 2. I go to Hawaii for 2 weeks. During that 2 weeks, everything runs smoothly, or continues to run smoothly. Everything runs well. There's no manager. I didn't leave anybody in charge. There's no manager. And when I come back, I find the department's doing great. And I tell managers, if the department's doing great after you've been gone for 2 weeks, you're doing a great job. Because you're empowering your people to make decisions. They know when they can make decisions. They don't put it off because you're not there. They don't call on you for every single little thing. They don't wait for your philosophy to kick in. They take their philosophy. And you've been working with them enough that they know where the middle ground is between your philosophy and their philosophy, what you think they should be doing and what they think they should be doing. And they can actually execute the way you want them to, because you've worked with them in such a way that you've respected them as people, not as employees, as people, and then you respected them as employees, and you understood that you're nothing without them, and you want to be the person who helps them be something without you. And that's what I'm talking about.
Wow. So does that really, do people argue with you about that? Do they?
Yes, they do. They say, well, you don't know my people. I said, I always say, okay, first of all, I know your people. I don't know them personally, but I know your people because I've seen all these people. I've been in 150 different companies, and I've seen these people. They're all there, just not the same people.
Yeah.
No, and I say to them, I say, do you enjoy like lording it over people? Do you enjoy the fact that they can't seem to make a decision about you? And I'm not saying this is the truth, but I'm just telling you the things that you might be seeing. They can't make a decision without you. Well, but they have to. I say, what? He said, they have to come to me. I said, why? I said, because I have to sign off on it. Why? Because I'm responsible for it. And I'd say, well, you are responsible for it. Teach them how to be responsible for it. Take a chance that they might make a mistake.
Yeah.
And if they make a mistake, tell them what the mistake was and talk about how they can do it better next time. It's really tough. It's really tough to do because whether you're angry or not, it's really tough to say, okay, you made a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you're under a hell of a lot of pressure. I was actually just yesterday, I was working at a car dealership, and they have an owner. It's a small dealership. They have an owner who runs everything in the dealership. They've got about 30 people working there, which is small for a car dealership. This guy he makes the decisions for everything. In fact, I opened up the day with interviews. I had the entire leadership team in there. And I asked a question, whatever the question was, and the owner starts to talk. And then I asked another question, and the owner's talking. And the other leaders are just sitting around the end of a conference table, just listening to the owner. And then I said, okay. And I turned to the other people. I said, so what do you think? And they were like, I don't know. And the funny thing is that after I met with employees, did a focus group, and we talked about this stuff, and then we did some training, and all of that, we were doing an action planning session. And I let the owner stay in the action planning session for the first half of the action planning session, and then I told him to go away. I said, I need your people to make decisions without you. Because one of these days, you might collapse. And they rush you to the hospital, and you're gone for 5 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. What's going to happen? What's going to happen when you leave? And they always say, I empower my people. And I say, apparently not.
Yeah.
They're afraid to tell me anything. They're afraid to come up with ideas. And then your other people, your lower level people, say you abuse them, and you yell at them, and you scream at them.
Wow.
You know why you yell at them and scream at them? Because you're under a lot of stress. Why? Because you got to make every decision.
Did that leader get it?
I think so. And we're going to meet again. But he did get it. He said, I get it. I get it. I am a little over the top. I do yell at people, but I get frustrated. I said, yes, you do. I said, here's what I think you should do. Let's talk about it next time. Most car dealers have an owner, and then they have a general manager. I said to him, you're a small dealership, you can't afford a general manager. General managers start at $100,000. And if you're not making any money, you can't afford a general manager. And you're small enough, frankly, for the owner to run it. But I said, you need to take your other leaders, your service manager, your 2 sales managers, your parts manager, your HR person, and you need to give them the authority to take your voice and tell it to the employees. If you're upset about something, stay away from the employees. Go to their manager, tell them what the problem is. You can yell at the manager. I don't care if you yell at the manager. Mm-hmm. And let the manager tell the employee. Not that you said this, but that this is what's happening.
Right.
Because they're going to handle it differently than you will. Not only that, they have a closer relationship.
Exactly. Good. All righty. So in this customer journey, your book is about customer service, but how did you get to the point where you really got it, that it's not just about, it's not enough to say that we give good customer service here. It's got to be really emboldened in the employees. I mean, how did you get to that point?
I'll tell you why I wrote my book, and that connects with it. I wrote my book because I was incredibly frustrated. I was incredibly frustrated, and I actually met with a woman who helped me get my thoughts in order. And I said, I'm frustrated. She said, why are you frustrated? I said, why am I frustrated? I said, I'm frustrated because you know what? We've all had bad service. We've all had bad managers. We've all had bad experiences. And yet we then go into the workplace and we do the exact same thing. We all know what a bad experience is. Why do we go back and do it to our customers?
Yeah.
This is why I call it, it's not rocket service. Because it makes no sense. And so that was the revelation. That was the epiphany. That we all know what a bad experience is, and frankly, we all know what a good experience is, what a really good experience is. And we all know what a mediocre experience is. But we don't do it on the job. We all know how we like to be treated by our manager. But we don't treat our employees that way. Mm-hmm. Why? Because we've got 100 other things on our mind.
Yeah.
And so the premises and the realization, the revelation was that all you really need to do is to start thinking about your own experiences, think about your own personal background and how it has affected you. And why would you do that to somebody else? Mm-hmm. I mean, what do they say? They say that the children of abusers become abusers. I'm not saying managers are abusers. I'm just saying that they do the same things they saw their managers do. In our management course, in our leadership course, we ask them to tell us about a leader. We don't use the word manager, we use leader. A leader that had had a major effect on their lives. And we say it could be someone you worked with, somebody you worked for, somebody who was a teacher, somebody who was a coach. It could be a parent or another relative. It could be somebody who you followed when you were in your 20s and was a friend of yours, and he was just the smartest person you'd ever met. Whoever. And then they go and they write it down. And then I ask people to tell me their stories. And I've had people tell me stories and start to cry in the middle of a big training session because this other person had such an effect on their lives, and they wouldn't be where they are today if it wasn't for that person. That person taught them so many great things and taught them when to act out and not when to act out, when to do things this way and not when to do the things this way. How do you look at your job? Why is it so important that you have this job? And people tell me stories, and you just hear the emotions in their voice. And then after that, I turn to them and I say, great stories, huh? I mean, they're just wonderful stories. So I'm not going to ask you what your people would say about you. I'm going to ask you, what do you want your people to say about you? I'm going to ask you, in 3 years after you take this course, and you start instituting some of the things we talked about, if I asked one of the people who works for you whether you were a leader and what kind of a leader you were, will they talk about you with that kind of passion, with that kind of memory?
That's powerful. Yeah, that's powerful. That's very powerful. And I hope the leaders listening to this, are thinking this, are taking that in and taking it to heart. So.
Yeah, I mean, they really, I get people coming to me afterwards and saying, that one just shook me up.
Yeah.
Just made me really start to think, what kind of a leader am I?
Yeah.
Am I following the rules because I'm a good manager? Am I meeting my numbers but not caring about the people that I'm taking care of?
Yeah, yeah.
Am I interested in their lives? One leader said to me, HR is always telling us, don't get involved in your employees' lives. It's dangerous. Just don't do it. I said yes, and a lot of people take that to the hilt. And that's where they go wrong. Mm-hmm. But you can have a personal relationship with the people you work with. You can know what's going on in their lives. You can know if their kid's in trouble. You can know if they're in trouble. Because people come to work every day and they behave a certain way because of what's going on in their lives. I always tell leaders, I say, please, don't use that old standby. Leave home at home and work at work. It just doesn't work.
Exactly.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. I say, we all have 128 hours every week. 7 times 24, add it up, 128 hours, right? Out of that 128 hours, if you're good, you spend 49 of those sleeping. So that leaves you, right? That was 168 hours, I'm sorry. That leaves you 119 hours. In that 119 hours, I'll guarantee you spend at least half of them either at work, going to work, coming home from work, coming down from work, getting ready for work, thinking about work, talking about work, and that doesn't count the hours you spend dreaming about work, because that's in the 49 hours. And if half of your life, when you're not sleeping, is involved with work, this better be a hell of a place for you to be. And you better want to come in every morning and do the job that you do. I'm a very lucky person. I love my job. I love my job, and people say that to me all the time. They say, you're so lucky. And there are reasons why people are in jobs. There are jobs that you can't get out of because you got financial issues and things like that. I get it. But sometimes you take a job and all of a sudden you have a manager who cares about you, who takes care of you, and you can be happy about going to work every day. Can I tell one more story? Let me tell one more story. Again, a car dealer. Like I said, we do a lot of work in the car. So I go to this car dealership, and we're having 4 visits to the car dealership, once a quarter. First one was the big organizational one, after I did a big ballroom session for all the managers. And I'm talking to the employees, I'm talking to the manager, and this guy, the general manager, he just doesn't get it. He doesn't get the importance of employees, and he doesn't get the importance of having them be invested in their jobs and things like that, and the customers too. He had a bad relationship with the service manager. He didn't like the service manager. I later found out that the reason he didn't like the service manager was because everybody liked the service manager. They didn't like him. So I walk out of there during the action planning session. One of the things we told them is, when a customer comes in, you have if they're carrying a can of Diet Coke, make sure you keep offering them a Diet Coke while they're there. It's personal. And he says, what am I supposed to do? Have like a 6-pack of every single kind of soft drink on the market in the back? I said, no, you don't have to. I said, and you don't have to give it away for free. And somebody said, yeah, when I go to Costco, the soda is discounted in the soda machines. Why don't we just charge a quarter for each can of soda? It'll cut down the cost. He said, yeah, you know what? If we charge a quarter for a can of soda, you know who's going to drink the soda? The employees. I'm like, so what? So what? So I walk out of the dealership at the end of the day after we finally got an action plan. And I just sat in my car for a minute. You know how you do that sometimes when you just got to let it sit with you? And I'm like, this is the worst general manager I've ever seen in my life. In our employee engagement survey in that dealership, they had 53% of the employees were engaged.
Wow.
Actively or engaged, but they were engaged. They had 47% were either not engaged or actively disengaged. And I think it was 12% were actively disengaged. Man. And I knew why. P.S. I'm ready to go for my second visit, and I get a call from the company, the big car company, and they said, we just want to let you know that that dealership, we fired the general manager. I went, oh, okay. And they said, so we're getting a new one, but we need to know everything that happened there while you were there. I want to see the action plan because we want to get him up to speed. I said, fine. So anyway, so then I talked to the new general manager on the phone before I come, and he's like, anything I can do to make this place better, I'm going to do. He says, you tell me what I need to do because I want to make. He sounded like Tony Robbins. And so I was really excited. So I get to the dealership. The first person I see is the service manager, and he says, welcome back. I said, thank you. Interesting things happening. He says, very interesting things happening. And then I walk into the sales area, and all of a sudden, I feel this big guy behind me, put his arms around me. And I'm like, what's going on? And I turn around, and it's this 6'2" technician, big technician, football player type. And he's hugging me, and he goes, "We love you. We love you." I said, I had nothing to do with him getting fired. He said, "We don't believe you." "We don't believe you." And I said, really? I said, really? I had nothing to do with him getting fired. And they said, "Yeah, but you probably put the thought in people's heads." The place turned around. I went back for the third visit. They had another customer employee experience survey. 91% of them were actively or just engaged.
Wow.
91%.
That's
went
huge.
up from 53.
That's huge.
Does a leader make a difference?
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. I hope all those leaders out there are listening to that part too.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Steve, before we let you go, what has been one or two pleasant surprises that you've had along this journey of the customer experience and employee engagement?
That there are companies out there who do the right thing all the time. That they do the right thing for their employees. They do the right thing for the customers. They do the right things for their bottom line. And they do the right thing in society. And the whole idea is that those things are not mutually exclusive. You can love your employees and take care of your employees and be good for your employees. And you can be loving your managers and be good to your managers and help them be better. You can have a good bottom line performance. You can meet your marks. And you can help society. And you can do it all at the same time. That's my biggest takeaway, because I'll tell you something. I worked in corporate America for a number of years before I went back to school, got my degree, and then started doing other stuff. But I had such a bad taste in my mouth. I said, these people, they just don't care about people. And I'm not saying that's true in every company. But even the companies where they do care about their people, it's just a bit. But there are companies that do it. And I can talk about those companies. And are they like this all the time? No. Are they phenomenal on every single customer interaction? No. I know people who drive Harley Davidsons, and they've said to me, "I love Harley Davidson. I love the bike. I love getting it serviced. But you know what? Sometimes they're really good, the service people. Sometimes they're not. But I would never drive anything else." Because they know that this is a brand they love.
Right.
And they can feel it. And frankly, you can feel it when you're in certain companies. And when I went back to that car dealership and then went back a third time, I felt it.
Oh, bet, yeah.
The whole place had turned over. And that's how you know. The other big surprise that I've had is how much employees and customers really want to be good. Customers don't want to yell at customer service representative. Employees don't want to be not engaged. And if you give them the opportunity, they will be engaged. If you give them the opportunity, they will smile sincerely. If you give a customer the opportunity to tell your people that this happened and then you treat them really, really well, they will reach out to you. But not only that, we're in an era of social media.
Yeah.
And they will tell other people.
Yeah.
They will tell other people. Go to the Southwest Airlines website, Their stock name is love. And people just love working for them. They don't do these crazy videos because they want to show off. They love working for them.
Yeah.
People love working for Costco. And the CEO of Costco says, "You know why people love working here? We treat them well. We pay them better than anybody else. We give them benefits, and we treat them well." Even though we're a retail company, and what I always hear in retail is, "Hey, it's the retail business. What do you want?" They want to know why they're working 55 hours a week? It's the retail business. What do you want? Figure out how to do it.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming on the program and sharing your knowledge and great ideas and insights with our audience. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for having me.
This podcast was brought to you by Bigger Brains, online training that won't bore you to tears. Expand the minds of your workforce at getbiggerbrains.com. Thanks for tuning in to Permission to Speak. If you want to increase collaboration and innovation in your organization, check out more resources available at speakingpractically.com or give me a call, Kelly Vandever, at 770-597-1108.